The firing of Jeff Sessions today has been compared to the Saturday Night Massacre in which President Richard Nixon fired his special prosecutor after his Attorney General, Elliot Richardson, refused to carry out that order. Attorney General Elliot Richardson resigned instead of carrying out the order from President Nixon. The Deputy Attorney General then resigned, refusing to carry out President Nixon's order. And then Solicitor General Robert Bork carried out the order by Nixon to fire Archibald Cox. But then, under public pressure, when a new special prosecutor was appointed, Robert Bork issued a new Justice Department rule protecting the special prosecutor. That rule said the Attorney General will not countermand or interfere with the special prosecutor's decisions or actions. The special prosecutor will determine whether and to what extent he will inform or consult with the Attorney General about the conduct of his duties and responsibilities. The special prosecutor will be provided with such funds and facilities to carry out his responsibilities as he may reasonably require. The special prosecutor may, from time to time, make public statements or reports as he deems appropriate, and shall, upon completion of his assignment, submit a final report to the appropriate people or entities or Congress. And so, the question tonight, is the new acting Attorney General as honorable as Richard Nixon's acting Attorney General Robert Bork? Here is the man who Richard Nixon installed as his acting Attorney General, Robert Bork, after he fired the special prosecutor who was investigating Richard Nixon and his administration.
I can only say that I'm not going to walk out of this job, out of this town, as the man who in any way compromised investigations or prosecutions.
That was Robert Bork, who guaranteed the new special prosecutor, then Leon Jaworski, full independence after Richard Nixon ordered the firing of the first special prosecutor, Archibald Cox. Our next guest lived through all of that. Joining us now, Jill Wine-Banks, former assistant Watergate special prosecutor and an MSNBC legal contributor. And Jill, I can only imagine what it was like for you during the Saturday Night Massacre, seeing your boss, special prosecutor, fired. But then Robert Bork, very much, I think, to the country's surprise, protected, deliberately did everything he could to and issued a rule that protected your investigation.
I think I know how the Mueller team feels tonight. There has to be huge anxiety. We have an acting attorney general now who has called the investigation a hoax and a witch hunt, and therefore has exhibited what I would consider to be a conflict of interest in terms of overseeing it. So they must be very anxious about what will happen, and I'm hoping that they're taking precautions to make sure that they protect themselves, at least until the new Democratic House can take action to formally and officially protect them through legislation.
Jill, when the night that it happened, Robert Bork was the Matthew Whitaker of his day. He was condemned by liberals and Democrats all over the country for carrying out the firing of the special prosecutor. But what most of those people who condemned Robert Bork did not really pay attention to after the fact is that Robert Bork did not, apparently, interfere with your investigation.
He did not, and there was debate that night and the next morning as to whether we had been fired or just Archie Cox had been fired, just the special prosecutor. It turned out that we had been abolished, but Bork did reappoint the entire office. So he did take the steps, but that was because of a huge public outcry. Mail in the old days, no email, but actual snail mail was delivered in huge quantities to our office, to the Congress, and to the White House. And the reaction was 3 days after the firing, Nixon had to make a U-turn. He said, I will give you the tapes. I will appoint a new special prosecutor. But much like what happened with us, we didn't trust the new special prosecutor. Why was he appointing someone new? Why didn't he just bring back Archibald Cox? So why do we need a new attorney general? And what will this mean in terms of what he can do to stymie the investigation? He has already expressed a distrust of the investigation, so he can start putting real holds on what they are able to do, who they can indict, who they can investigate, who they can go forward with. So it can be a real showstopper without firing Mueller. That's why there is a big protest plan for tomorrow by Indivisible, and I believe MoveOn is also doing this at 5 o'clock tomorrow in Chicago anyway, so I don't know if it's nationwide at 5. There will be a protest about the act of firing Sessions, and although he technically said he resigned with the request of the president, so that's firing.
And the history of the Nixon era shows that Matthew Whitaker has plenty to fear about being investigated himself for obstruction of justice as acting attorney general if he does in any way conspire with Donald Trump to do that. Jill Wine-Banks, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I'm sure we're going to have a lot to say about this as we continue covering it. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.